Hello, Tubies, and how are you all doing? I hope you're doing fantastic. We're back, and you should remember this book from my book review that I did on this 4-book series. This is the Modern Witchcraft Grimoire, A Complete Guide to Creating Your Own Book of Shadows by Skye Alexander. So, what I wanted to talk about, and I'm not going to review this book, we've already done that, I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to read things to you, but I am going to read some of the chapter names. The first 5 of them. I still recommend that you pick this book up. There's only 5 chapters on designing your grimoire, and then there's 15 chapters on types of spells and things that you could put into your Book of Shadows, including magical concoctions, so on and so forth. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the chapter names, which are going to be talking points in this video. I'm going to talk to you about my opinion based off of what I've read in this book. I'm not going to spoil anything in this book in case that you want to go and buy it. Again, this is the Modern Witchcraft Grimoire, Your Complete Guide to Creating Your Own Book of Shadows by Skye Alexander. Please go and buy this book. Every dollar that you buy on this book goes to me. Just kidding. Could you imagine if I could do like a brand deal or something with a witchy? Yeah, I gotta get millions of subscribers first. But, okay, so why create a grimoire, or a book of shadows, or whatever you want to call your magical journal? You can call it whatever you want. You can call your Book of Shadows a unicorn. Lunar Wisdom would probably say, well, does it make it a unicorn? Who are you to judge, Lunar Wisdom? Who are you to judge? Just because it doesn't quack like a duck and it meows at the same time doesn't mean it's not a duck. It could be a duck who identifies as a cat. Yeah, we live in that era now, Lunar Wisdom. Time to evolve. Just kidding. Throwing a little shade, having a little fun. Lots of private inside jokes none of you are following, but that's okay. So why create a grimoire? What is the purpose of creating a grimoire? Who wants to record their spells and their rituals? Lots of people want to record their spells and rituals. Lots of grimoires, books of shadows, magical books. There's a Gerald Gardner Book of Shadows, there's Scott Cunningham's Book of Shadows that you can buy, there's tons of witchy author Book of Shadows that you can buy and own. There's also magical grimoires, like the Lesser Key of Solomon, and various other ancient manuscripts that are grimoires. Now, some of them say they're older than they really are. They've been dated to be much younger than they've been promoted to be. But that doesn't make them any less magical. If you have a witch in your family, maybe your mother or your grandmother, your aunt or your uncle or your sister or your brother or, I don't know, your dog. Don't sit there, Lunar Wisdom, telling me that your dog can't be a witch. It can be a familiar who has transformed into a dog and at night transforms into a human and does ancient, powerful, mystical witchcraft. Okay, this is a whole new TV show that I am trying to get onto the CW. It's called Charmed 3.0. The pets are the witches. Yeah, all of the witches are cats, and the source of all evil is a dog. So, there's that. So, creating a grimoire allows you to store your rituals, store your spells, store your magic, all the things you've heard before. It helps you keep track and show the progress of your craft. Now, what order should you put those in? Should things go here, or there, or over there, or over here? Do I put this entry over there? What about if I want to talk about that demon and his vanquishing spell? Where does he go? You know what I mean? It really depends on your artistic sense and how you want your book to be laid out. If you want to color in your book, if you want to burn the edges of the pages, if you want tea, if you want to organize it in a specific way, if you want to use a binder, if you want to use a spiral notebook, if you want to use something like this, which is what I use, if you want to use something where you can move the pages around, that's perfectly fine. You do whatever it is that you want. It's just a book at the end of the day that you are using to store your magical workings in. Now, people love aesthetics. Okay, let me show you my actual book. So this is my actual book, and it's a lot thicker than this book because I keep stealing pages from this book and taping them. Yes, literally taping them. Okay, you'll have to excuse me, the camera cut out. So what I was saying is, as we were going through the first 5 chapters of this book, Modern Witchcraft Grimoire, A Complete Guide to Creating Your Own Book of Shadows by Sky Alexander, why create a grimoire? A grimoire is a really great place to document your craft, to help you watch it as it evolves and grows and metamorphosizes into something else. I mean, my craft personally has changed numerous times since I've been practicing, you know. Started with just the basics of Wicca and some herbs and a mortar and pestle and charmed, and moved my way up to working with spirits and doing more complicated, elaborate spells and rituals and following their guidance, all the way up to working with the saints and experiencing that before starting to work with the Morrigan and demons, which is where I am today. So you get to watch your craft evolve. Also, if you journal in your Book of Shadows, you get to see where you are at specific points in your craft, or where you were, and see how you, personally, as a human being, have also evolved. Crafting your grimoire. Now, as I had said before my camera cut off, your grimoire can be in anything. Leather bound, it can be in a binder, it can be on a notepad, it can be anywhere you want. It can be on your computer, it can be YouTube videos where you're like, this is my public grimoire with all of my public spells, and if you want to follow along, then you can journey along on my craft. Your Book of Shadows can be any way you want it to be. It can be as pretty as your Book of Shadows, as anybody else's Book of Shadows. It could be a charmed replica Book of Shadows. I know I was personally looking into like an 800-page charmed replica Book of Shadows for me to personally use, just because I like the aesthetic of it. You can bind your own Book of Shadows, and there's lots of bookbinding tutorials on the internet. Tea leaf staining your stuff, you could do basically anything you want. Now, this book that I'm looking through, this Modern Witchcraft Grimoire book, you know, talks a little bit about early grimoires, famous ancient grimoires, summoning the spirits, Solomon style. There's grimoires in the Age of Enlightenment, Leland's grimoire, the grimoire of the Gerald Gardner and Doreen Valenti. I don't know how to say that. There's modern grimoires, history of secrecy, destroy the evidence, what should you include in your book. You can have online grimoires, so on and so forth. So, when it comes to your Book of Shadows, it can be anything you want it to be. I personally have a little protection wording that you read when you open the book, but it doesn't mean that I'm saying, you know, if you read this book you're cursed or anything like that. People do that, and that is, you know, that's their prerogative. So, when you're crafting your book, here are some questions for you to ask. Does your book need to be portable? If so, size matters. How often do you intend to write in your Book of Shadows? What do you plan to include in your Book of Shadows? So these are just some questions for you to ask. And again, you can pick up this book on Amazon or any local bookstore that may carry it. And I'm not going to go through everything in these first 5 chapters because I want you to buy the book, read it for yourself. But I also want to give you a sense of how I started creating my Book of Shadows. So I've had many forms of a Book of Shadows aside from this, from hardcover black books that just have lined pages inside, to big thick binders, down to this little guy. I refuse to have more than one Book of Shadows. Some people have 50 grimoires. They have grimoires for dream journals, they have grimoires for this, they have grimoires for that, they have grimoires for over there, they have grimoires for this, and they have grimoires for that thing over there. And that's perfectly fine. You can have as many Book of Shadows as you want. I personally prefer to have one, so anytime I need to do a new entry, I will take a page from this book, literally cut it out of this book, and Literally, I'm not even joking you. I'll even, look, tape. And I tape it into the back of this book. Now, why don't I just unravel the binding on that and bind more pages? Because I don't know how to do that. And I'm far too lazy to look it up. So I like to just tape it in there. Does it look a little ghetto when you start flipping through the back of the book? Absolutely. But at the same time, that's how I prefer to do my Book of Shadows. I don't do a lot of diagrams or coloring or anything like that in there. I try to keep it very basic, very simple, get to the point. What is a spell? What are the ingredients? Why are we using it? If I need to make addendums to the spell, I'll fold a piece of paper and tape it on top of the original spell so that you can see the progression of how that spell has evolved over the years. And I've got plenty of pages where I do that. So you can have things like sensory delights, you basically, there's an entire tutorial on here. Bind your book. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's 2 pages literally on how to bind your book. So organizing your grimoire. How should you organize your Book of Shadows? You should organize it any way you see fit. If you want to have an index at the beginning or an index at the end of the book or whatever the case may be, where you can find specific terms and stuff like that, that kind of Book of Shadows would take a lot more planning. For me, I just go based on the way witches of old would have probably done it. They would have just, in their book, in some form of book or somewhere where they needed to remember a spell, they would just write it down. They didn't worry about, okay, does it need to be in this order, does it need to be in that order, this needs to go before this needs to go before that. They just wrote it down. That's what I do. My book is in no order. So you have to kind of figure it out yourself. As you read through each page, you see the craft has evolved in numerous different ways. Okay? So there's methods for organizing. Keep a day book. Take a seasonal approach. Follow the moon. And then they have a spell in here to protect your home. Separate everyday spells from special occasion. Arrange your book by topic. Sort your spells by type. A lot of books that you'll find today will actually do that. Now, these chapters are short. Okay, these are short, easy to read chapters. Because they basically just want to tell you the same information you read in other books, but with their own spin. What to include in your grimoire. So, some people at the beginning will include the Wiccan read. Some will begin with a blessing, like a Celtic blessing. You want to date your entries according to this book, or you want to put in your magical workings. What else goes in your grimoire? Keep track of celestial influences, track your health cycles, note situations in your everyday life, pay attention to your dreams, record your readings, other things to include, and then that's the end of the chapter. Like, it's a really short chapter. So what I would include in my Book of Shadows, if I was telling a new witch, hey, okay, so we've got your Book of Shadows, you figured out how you want to lay it out, but what do you want to include? Well, for me, what I would include is everything that is involved in my craft. I don't generally record, hey, a spirit came or whatever. Like, sometimes if I see Boone's face in the flames, I'll record that. I'll be like, on this date, at this time, doing this particular spell with these intentions, I saw Boone's face. His true face. Well, actually, I saw him with a tribal mask, so it wasn't his true face. But the point is, you want to include things in your grimoire that make sense to you, that relate to your craft. I have lots of personal journal entries in my Book of Shadows that do relate to my craft and relate to specific elements of my craft, specifically around jobs, money, and love. It's up to the individual witch what they want to put in there. Some people will have a book solely for potions. Some will have a book solely for incense. And I tried that. I tried having a book for incense, but it didn't feel right. And then some people have a book for tinctures and tonics and lotions and stuff like that, and some people will have a book for oils, and some people will have a book for their spells, and some people will have a book just for their rituals. So it really is up to you on how, and how, not just how you want to organize your book, but what specifically you want to put in your book. There's no right or wrong when it comes to your Book of Shadows. If you want to watercolor in your Book of Shadows, if you want to follow Molly Roberts, there's some Hecate, Cirrus Hecate, or whatever, you know, she used to be a friend of Cat W Magic, but she does junk journaling, and the way I understand junk journaling is you're just kind of putting anything and everything into this book, but I mean, you could do your Book of Shadows like, what is that fancy thing people do, where they put their photos in an album, but they really decorate the album, like they just go overboard. There's like an entire community on YouTube based around it. I can't remember what it's called. But you can decorate your book any way you want, you can use anything for your book, and you can put whatever you want in your book. However, I suggest that you put your most magical aspects of your craft in your book, along with journal entries, so that whoever finds your book, you know, 80 years down the road, can follow your journey. Preparing to use your grimoire. So, you know, you basically want to create a sacred space, as they're talking about here, the power of circles, so on and so forth, cleansing your sacred space, purifying. You want to consecrate your grimoire. Now, I personally did not consecrate my grimoire. This doesn't mean that you have to consecrate your grimoire. It doesn't mean it will be anything less magical. You technically consecrate your grimoire when you put your first entry in there, when you say this book is used for, or whatever you want your opening page to say. When you put your first spell in there, you are making it into a magical tome, because the intention that you have behind it is that this is a place where I will record my workings. So there's writing in your grimoire, there's about protecting or writing in code and using special alphabets like the Theban alphabet or the Futhrok runes. You could use the Okram runes, or, you know, whatever it is, and then there's a whole section on preparing to write, and then that's it. That's it. That's the first 5 chapters of this book. But I suggest that you go out and buy it anyways. So, when you are sitting down to write in your grimoire, what should you write about? Should you write in your grimoire every day? Should you write in your grimoire every week? Should you do it seasonally? When should you do it? I personally do it if the spirits have given me a new spell, or if there's something that I want to record that I just need to write down, like a journal entry, into my Book of Shadows. I do not try and force anything. Don't force it, and definitely do not write... Okay, this is just my opinion. We're going to get a little versial here, okay? Can't say that word on YouTube anymore. They demonetize your videos. But what I'm going to say is this. I personally do not write anything in my Book of Shadows. No spell. I don't write any kind of spell in my Book of Shadows that I haven't done before. -1. There's a cow heart love spell, and I'm still trying to get my hands on a cow heart. I know you can do it in Alberta because we are cow central, but getting your hands on a cow heart unless you go to a butcher is difficult. And then they want to know what you want the cow heart for, and you have to go in prepared. You gotta Google a cow heart recipe, and then you gotta show them the cow heart recipe, and then you bring the cow heart home, and then you go on YouTube and you're like, we're gonna get dark and twisty and do a love spell with a cow heart. Okay. But I'm still trying to obtain a cow heart. I am still trying to find a cow heart. If you want to send me a cow heart, you can find my address down in the description down below, and you can send me that cow heart as love mail. Of course, that is a joke. So, I don't tend to put any spells or rituals or demons or anything like that in my Book of Shadows unless I have physically worked with them, because I want to dictate or put in my personal information. Now, if I am researching a new demon and I know I will be working with it, I will put a synopsis of that particular demon in my Book of Shadows, along with a vanquishing spell. Right? Power 3 spell. Just kidding. But I will put a synopsis of that demon and its end and any relevant information into the Book of Shadows. I'm assuming the internet will be around in 50 years, so whatever child of mine that has crawled from the depths of despair and found my Book of Shadows, they will be able to be like, oh, Clonic. Okay, I'll just Google on it, because there's not enough information here. Aside from that, your Book of Shadows really is your own magical space for you to record your workings and whatnot. Now, those of you who live in homes or situations where witchcraft is just bad, you probably don't want to be recording anything that, especially if you have nosy people that live with you, like your parents or your roommate or whatever, and they like to go through your things. I don't know why your roommate's going through your things. You probably want to get a new roommate at that point, but hear me out. I would store your Book of Shadows somewhere secret, somewhere safe. Now, should you write in a code, or write in a rune, or write in Latin? I know there's lots of people who want to write in Latin. No. And I'm going to tell you why. Keep your Book of Shadows to your native language, whatever that may be. And you're probably thinking, well, I want to write in Latin. It sounds more cool. It seems more like, you know, Charm 2.0, where their power of 3 spells are in Latin, and they're not even real power of 3 spells, and all this other stuff. And it's like, no. Do not do that. Write your Book of Shadows in your native language. I know it looks cool, I know it looks awesome to write in Latin, or in a rune system, or in some made-up elf language, or whatever you want to do it in. But you also have to realize that as you get older, you may outgrow those things. As you get older, you may forget how to read that particular rune system or language or whatever it is that you've made, and then your Book of Shadows just becomes useless. And then what if you pass your Book of Shadows down? Well, it's not like that person's going to know what that, like if you didn't give them the decoder, if you will, or whatever. So I would just say write your Book of Shadows in your native language, and then that way you can pass your book down. That's what most people do anyways. But I'm not also saying don't write your book in any way you want, because it is your book at the end of the day. It is your magical experience. It is your magical journey that you're going on, and if you don't want to share that with anybody ever when you're like 95 years old and laying on your deathbed, then that's perfectly fine. Okay. So I hope that this video has given you some insight into how to make your own Book of Shadows and what goes into that, and this is kind of another one of those Book of Shadow prompt videos, but I wanted to do it more geared towards new witches, because I think a lot of new witches have a lot of questions around how do I create my Book of Shadows, what goes into my Book of Shadows. Everybody's Book of Shadows on YouTube, Pinterest, and so on and so forth looks identical. Please do not take spells from Pinterest. It is always best to craft your own spell. There's nothing wrong with taking spells from books like the 5,000 Spell Book or whatever. I've done that a few times. There's no shame in it. However, you also have to realize that a lot of these spell books are going to use things that you may not have. Resins you may not have. Ingredients you may not have. Oils you may not be able to make or order or buy. So you as the witch will have to learn how to substitute things out, how to work with your entities, your spirits, to do the same thing but maybe with less ingredients or whatever. You essentially learn how to craft your own spell. And what better way to craft your own spell than to find somebody else's spells that you like to use or that work for you, you know, in a book or whatever, and manipulate them, change them. You know, sometimes I'll go to Solitaire and be like, hey, do you have an incense recipe for this, or a spell idea for this? And, you know, she'll tell me, and then I will go and I will take the concept, but I will change it to fit my craft. Okay, that is essentially how spellcrafting works. Is you look at a situation, look at an issue, and you think, okay, what herbs, what oils, what candles, what kind of thing would work with this? And if it doesn't come to you, just meditate on it. You know, focus on it. Like, well, maybe not focus so much on it because it may never come to you, but you know, meditate on it, and the spirits will give you the guidance. The spirits will tell you, you know, these are the herbs, these are, you know, and it's not just the spirits, it's whatever you work with. Whether it's a god, a goddess, a demon, an angel, whatever it is, okay? Okay, so I hope that this video has given you some insight. I hope that it has taught you something. I hope you have learned something from it. I know there's a lot of you out there who watch me that are more experienced than a lot of the new witches, but I just wanted to share how I sort of do my Book of Shadows without giving out too much information, or I should say my Grimoire. You can call it whatever you want. I also just wanted to, you know, just kind of touch on some of these topics because I don't see a lot of people talking about a Book of Shadows, so I just want to bring that Book of Shadows prompt idea concept back, okay? So until next time, my fabulous little Scoobies.